Good evening, good morning. How's everybody doing today? So we'll go ahead and just start. John always wants to make sure I do an intro so he can cut the video. So, arigashimasu. All right. So I see some new people. I think Dave Bohr's in the house, even though his name doesn't say Dave Bohr.
That's my borrowed name, Sensei. Good to see you.
So I'll start with a quote. Let's see the quote. Meditation without thinking. To be constantly in a state of not knowing. To have a beginner's mind is to be able to actually learn. This is to be in a state of constant learning. Then life itself is as exciting and curious as watching a movie or reading a book. When we are reading a good story or watching a film unfold, our attention is always focused and in harmony with the story. We are drawn into it and we follow with all of our senses, even though we know it is only a story. It can move us to laughter and to tears. Life, as such, is the ultimate story. When we are in this very practical and real, yet indescribable state of present moment awareness, this is what we can truly call meditation without thinking. And that is from Curtis Sensei's book, Letting Go. The chapter is Meditation Without Thinking. So I encourage you all to go there and kind of check it out, peruse the book. It's a good book, but we are covering Aikido on Maui. So tonight we are going over etiquette, and it's 8, 9, and 10, and I'll just give you guys a little brief rundown. Number 8, if you go to train in another dojo or another school of Aikido, do not attempt to impose your style of training upon them. Instead, try to grasp exactly what the sensei is teaching. Number 9, when you become a Yudansha, you represent Ki Society, Hawaii Ki Federation, and Maui Ki Aikido at all times, even in your daily life. Consider this and conduct yourself accordingly. And number 10, never put down another form of martial art or any other form of self-development discipline. Those are pretty, I like to say, common sense type things. You know, if you go to another dojo, be respectful. I was very fortunate before I moved to Maui. I kept a gi in my travel bag, and probably I think I had at one point and trained at 50 different places along the West Coast, East Coast, as Northern California, Southern California. I kind of made my. There was a book called Aikido in America, and it was written, and they interviewed a lot of the big senseis in that book, and I made a point to try to go to every dojo of every sensei in that book and then write down what I learned at that dojo from that specific teacher. It was quite interesting, and I still have the book, and I go back and read it, and there was a lot of Frank Duran. They were all the only Key Society teachers in that book. I think was George Simcox Sensei. The rest were all Aikikai, and then there was also some that didn't. They were kind of individual, broke apart, and weren't in any organization. So it was quite interesting to see the different perspectives that every style brought, and I really enjoyed it. It really helped me develop, what I would call my ambition to learn. I just wanted to learn everything I could about Aikido, and that's kind of why I did it. I know a few of you, especially those in Europe, tend to go to different schools of Aikido. I know Toby Vogel Sensei, he's a part of the Judo Bond, and they have a teaching program in the Judo Bond, which he's told us in the past. But I would like to start off with you, Mr. Vogels. If you could just tell me your perspective on these three things. I've kind of said, 8, 9, and 10, training at another dojo, also responsibilities of being a Yudansha, and then the last one, of course, is never put any style down. What do you say, Toby Vogel Sensei?
Well, I think they are actually saying the same thing, right? These three things, especially if you first look at when you become. Sorry?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. When you become a Yudansha, you represent Ki Society.
Mhm.
I mean, so your behavior determines how people will, think about you. So if you go to a different school, of course you pay attention to what they are doing and you try to follow what they are teaching. And I think it's the same thing, right? The way you behave is um, maybe different. When you practice, some kind of behavior comes out, and this is described in these three things, right? In these three rules for etiquette. And so, if you visit a different dojo, you try to do what they are doing. So you look around, you be open, you try to see how things work, what the common what the undescribed rules are, because you don't know the rules in this different dojo. So you look around and you see what they are doing and try to copy that. So you be open to whatever they have to offer. And in Europe, yes, it's very, we like to go around and see what other teachers are teaching. Yeah. So and that doesn't only apply to Key Society teachers, but also to Aikikai teachers. So we, especially in the beginning years, we shopped around and watched and see what people had to offer. That's about it, I say. I have nothing to add to that.
Uh, you come from a different perspective though, because you do have the judo bond and you do have a teaching program there.
Yeah.
What exactly do you see the pros and cons of that particularly?
Okay, so um, the idea is that the government supports all these teachers in this program, which means you are an officially recognized organization or dojo by the government. So as far as insurance goes and so on, everything is arranged by this judo bar. Then if you would like to organize seminars that are maybe too expensive, they can help you out. They will subsidize things for you. So the teaching program, I think, is very valuable. But this is from a teacher's perspective, right? I'm a regular high school teacher also. They teach you how to teach in a let's say more relative way. Which means how to prepare. You prepare a class. You have a certain time schedule. What is the subject that you are going to talk about? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? So you have to really reflect on the things that you're doing, not only for yourself but also for your students. Did what you were teaching, did that come across with your students? How do you know that came across with your students, and so on? So I think for a teaching program, that is really valuable because you learn to look at the whole situation as a teacher, which you might never have done before. And in this way, it's like going to school and become a teacher. They have this teacher training program. You be educated to become a teacher. Well, and they kind of, took out some of that teaching and put it into this teaching system for Aikido teachers. But they have the same for judo, jujutsu, any kind of martial arts that is connected to the judo ball.
And with that, I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're required to attend a variety of different styles, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So in order to get, as a teacher, you should not only know about just the one thing that you're teaching, but also what's available in at least in the Netherlands, as far as other styles goes, right? As if you are a sports teacher at school, you need to know all the different kind of sports that are available for the children. So with the same idea, and in this case limited to Aikido, they want you to look around and see what kind of styles of Aikido there are in the Netherlands in this case. So they would like you to visit different dojos and different teachers. Yeah. You get, let's say, a classes in the history of Aikido. So who's who, what style came from where, and so on, so that you know at least that a little bit basics about the history of and the development of Aikido in the world. So these are different aspects of being a teacher, so that you know what's going on. And the whole group is mixed. So if you come in as a key society teacher, you see all these other teachers teach. You might wonder, hey, what's going on here? Because this is quite different from what I'm doing. So why is that? What are they doing? Why are they doing the things they are doing? So you have to go and see what's going on there and why they are doing the things and the way they are doing it.
Sure. Thanks for sharing, Toby. I think that's quite interesting, just from my own perspective. And I called on him first just because I know Toby Vogel Sensei fairly well, and I know I've heard him talk about the Judavon, and I've heard Curtis Sensei talk about it, and I think that's important to see, different perspectives on how their country does structure something, because here in Hawaii, it's really super unique on how we structure things the way we do. And I was kind of looking at this, training at another dojo, you want to be respectful. It's kind of like if you go to somebody's house and you go, hey, why do you do that like that? I do it like this. This is much better. Yeah, the way you're doing it is not very good. You need to do it this way. It'd be kind of like that. You'd never go to somebody's house and do that. You're washing your dishes the wrong way. You should put the soap this way, and you don't do that. You got to be respectful. So it's like I say, it's kind of common sense. It's not always common. Uh, it's pretty self-explanatory, but I want to hear some other people's take on these 3 points. Vitelli, do you speak English? Because I think you do. I'm not sure. I don't know you very well, but please, I'd love to hear your input on this. Could you introduce yourself? I don't, and many people may not know who you are.
My name is Vitaly. I'm from Minsk, Belarus. I'm not a native speaker English. I speak not very well. Yes, it's a couple of words about me. It's difficult to me to say something about training in other dojos, because I'm trained not very long time. I trained 3 years. I only 32 rank, and I have no experience to train in another dodis, but a couple of times I try to do this. Of course, I do what other senseis show me and the way they show me, because I go to their place. So it's up to them to show how to do one or another thing. That's all, I guess.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm so glad you're here. I've not met you, but I hope to someday meet you. And I think it's great that you're here and enjoying the classes with us and taking part. I think that's really great. So thank you so much for just sharing.
Thank you. Thanks, A.
Welcome. David Bohr, I see. Can you unmute yourself, David? And are you training in the Aikikai dojo there in Taiwan?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, good to see you. Long time no see. I've been in Taiwan now 8 years, and I've been training over here. It's more Aikikai style, so a little more breakneck. There's really not much ki infused in it, but like you said, you just be respectful and try to learn what they have to teach. They have a lot of techniques I've never seen before, a lot of break throws, break falls. I had to tell him to go slow with me. Just respect what they have to teach, and now I can just add to my repertoire. And sometimes I try to infuse my ki with their techniques. And I started showing the sensei a little bit about kokyudosa after class one night, and he thought that was pretty amazing because he uses force, and I use ki, and I can hold him. So he wants me to teach him that stuff. He learned from Yamada Sensei from New York City. So he's got a lot of funky street arts, and he's pretty brawn. So, and he's a young guy, so he likes to throw everybody around. But yeah, just try to learn. I don't tell them they're doing it wrong. They're not doing it wrong. They're doing it their way. And as far as being a black belt or a yudansha, even when you just walk in the street and make way for people in the crosswalk or help somebody just make their life better. So yeah, it's 24/7 mentality. So I try to remind myself of that sometimes.
Great, thanks. What time is it there in Taiwan, by the way?
We're noon hour tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming, David. It's good to see you. I've talked to you on Facebook a few times, and so glad you're joining us here.
Yeah, I'd like to try to be a more steady part of it, depending on the time.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, let's see. I think let's see. We've grown to like 2 pages, so I can't see everybody. I used to be able just to see everybody. It was like a handful of us. It's kind of grown here. Lillian Paiva Sensei, how about you?
Hello, Sensei. Lillian from Honoka. What's funny right off the bat was that quote that you read from Krita Sensei. I just read it at 5:30 tonight. I've been rereading his book since I started your class because I reread it every year. And it never fails to amaze me how every time I read something, I feel like it was written for me. It puts me sort of in my place. Regarding the etiquette 8, 9, and 10, I think, like you said, they really are common sense. I haven't had the experience of going to too many dojos outside of Hawaii Key Federation, mostly Japan. But of course, it's common sense. It makes sense. My hardest part for me, and anybody who knows me, is taming that goofy side of my nature that sometimes forgets that I'm in a very special place, and to tone it down a little bit and not be so me at times. But other than that, it really is. It's a great reminder. And this is why I'm enjoying your class so much, because this is a great reminder for everybody, for everything.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Anytime of course, anytime you went to another dojo, Suzuki Sensei or Kuro Sensei would want to know about it. And you would say, oh, Sensei, I'm going to be traveling. I might be going this dojo or that dojo. And they would never say, no, don't go there. They would say, oh, good, go there. And a lot of times, of course, what people may not know, it was super important that if you were going to another Key Society dojo, that you got a letter of introduction. And this is very, very old school. You always got a letter of introduction to go see the sensei there, so they knew who you were. But a lot of times, if you go to, let's say, another style, you may not get a letter. You'll just kind of show up there. And I would always bring a white belt in my bag. If I was going to another dojo, I didn't. I would usually, make sure arrive super early, talk to the sensei, tell them who I am, and say, I'm happy to wear my white belt. And a lot of times they would say yes or no, but I have a quick story about that. I was traveling to San Diego and I wanted to meet Chiba Sensei. Chiba Sensei was known as the guy who broke his Otomo's arm in New Mexico for attacking him incorrectly. Or when he was in England and he told somebody to attack him with a real knife, and they actually cut his gi because he didn't get out of the way, and he dislocated the guy's shoulder. This guy was tough, so I said, I want to go to that dojo. I was much younger then. I want to check this guy out. So of course I go there, and it is the one time I didn't bring a freaking white belt. So I show up early, They actually, their dojo was in an old bank that had a drive-through, and the sensei always parked in the little drive-through area. So I parked in the regular parking. I show up and I pay my mat fee, and I said, I was looking for my dogi bag. I don't have a white belt. Do you require me to wear one? And they looked at me and said, absolutely. And I said, okay. And I think at the time I was around second or third Q at the time. And they said, okay, we'll get you one. I said, okay. So I go in the locker room and I change, and I'm in the middle of changing, and the guy comes in and hands me, I think it was like a child's belt. I couldn't wrap it around only one time, and I told a little knot that had like two little things right there, so I looked like a complete idiot. Besides being at Chiba Sensei's dojo, I'm not looking squared away at all. I walk out onto the mat and I see people stretching, and I look over at this one person and I go, why does their gi have little red dots on it? Like a red dot on the elbow, red dot on the shoulder, a red dot on the wrist area, a red dot here, and there's these little round red sticker things. And the person looks like they got the measles, I walk over and I'm like, hi, my name is Tracy, I'm from Arizona, how are you? Yeah, how are you? And I go, you're not the only one, but I see a lot of other people that have red dots on their gi. What does that mean? Oh, those are injuries. I was like, they're what? Yeah, we've been injured here, so we want to notify our other partner that, don't crack my shoulder, it's been dislocated, or don't hurt my wrist, it's been broken. And I was thinking, I don't know if I'm in the right dojo or not, but that was my first experience going to an Aikido dojo in San Diego at Chiba Sensei's place. The class was fine, of course. I did get a concussion, but that's a whole nother story that I'll leave for another time. Anyway, I'd like to go back to Charles Boyer Sensei. Charles Boyer Sensei, by the way, is having a Zoom class tomorrow. So I think the information has been emailed out, but just to give a little prop to Charles Boyer's class. Charles, what can you tell us about these three things, 8, 9, and 10?
Well, thank you, Sensei. Thank you very much. One comment just to answer Lillian Paiva Sensei's comment. I would just say, please don't ever stop being yourself. Yeah. Okay. So I haven't trained in a lot of other dojos either. I've been to a couple seminars that were outside of Key Society. I've trained with a lot of people in Key Society seminars or seminars in Europe where there were a lot of non-Key Society people. And even though we think that these are common sense rules and guidelines, Curtis Sensei was talking about I think it was Friday, that we put a lot of nonsense, and if we put a lot of nonsense in our head, then nonsense will come spewing out. And so that's why we have these guidelines, because people don't they might actually gossip and do these kind of things that one is maybe accustomed to doing. So we have to be very conscientious of that when we go train with another group. And I think the last seminar I went to that wasn't a Key Society, it was quite a while ago. It was maybe it's probably 15 years ago or something now, maybe more. It was Mariyama Sensei. Right after he came out of his long period of seclusion. And, it wasn't that different because he had been a part of Key Society at one time. Although the people that were part of the group did things a bit differently. I do remember that. And so it was a bit of an adjustment. I was Yudansha at that stage, maybe a Nidan or something, and training with other people. I basically just let other people take the lead. Okay, show me what you understand he's talking about, and please, I'll do my best to follow along. And yeah, I mean that's uh, my experience, and I like what you said about. I mean, even though we might not do a letter now, if we go train in another dojo, I think that's another thing that we sometimes take for granted. For traveling, we just show up somewhere in another key society dojo, and it's always a good idea to notify our teacher, whoever that is, so that they could reach out and let the teacher of the other dojo know ahead of time that we might be stopping by, or that we will be stopping by on a certain date. Those are the kind of things that I've learned along the way. I think that's, yeah.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
You get many visitors that come to Lokahi that may not be Key Society?
Oh yeah. We
And
have.
how's your experience with that?
Well, yeah. I mean, we there haven't been any issues or difficulties. I've had people over the last 10 years. There have been some people from other styles of Aikido that have come by, Aikikai, and also Yoshinkan and some other styles, and also some like people that are searching for some another style to integrate into their MMA, their mixed martial arts. So we've had a few of those stop by from here and there, and but always the students, wherever they come from, they're very respectful, and we try to welcome them. We never know; they may be a student for the rest of their lifetime with us. So we welcome them and treat them as we treat one of our own. But yeah, it's always a kind of a refreshing thing to have this these changes from time to time.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much for sharing. Reina, have you had the opportunity to train at other dojos? I know when you were in college on the mainland.
I did train at several different dojos, but mostly Key Society, and that was mostly because a group of people were going to go, and you just pay attention to what their rules are, and you're going to figure it out. Like, oh, they leave their slippers at the entryway, not at the edge of the mat, or you know, I mean, there's certain things you have to ask, but more often than not, you can kind of figure it out. And the only Aikikai experience I had was Shiohira Sensei in San Francisco, and he was Key Society before. Um, but my sister lives in San Francisco, so I used to go every once in a while. And the the last time I went, well, I had a friend there too, and so he told me, "Oh yeah, just come, and then there's going to be a class before, so just go ahead and change in the dressing room." And I was like, okay, well, there's nobody there to, greet you at the door because the dressing room is separate area from the mat. So I was like, okay. So I went in and I went into the dressing room, and I felt kind of strange because, that's not my home dojo or whatever. But anyway, I opened the door to go out. And as soon as I slid the door open, there's Shiohira Sensei with a bookend, and then there's some other apparently there's a oh apparently there was some robberies happening, I guess, of their changing room, and they weren't sure, that they thought I was, up to no good. So that was a shocker, but um
So
yeah.
Shiohira Sensei was there with a bokan right when you came out of the dressing room.
Well, they were waiting for me to open the door and come out. They
Ah!
were waiting outside. So I opened the door and he's standing right there. I was like, "Hi, Sensei." It was kind of awkward, but I mean, we all laughed about it afterward. But then as far as other styles coming in to train, I did have an experience here on Maui, and there was a guy who came, and I believe he was Aikikai, and in a sense, he was having difficulty with, it was different, the way that he moved versus, everybody else. And um that I was probably like in my 20s still, and so I could do pretty good uke. And um after class, he wanted to practice with me, so I was like, okay. So we were practicing, and he was happy because he could throw me around. And I just remember this clearly, because this is one of the times that I got scoldings from Suzuki Sensei. And this is in the old dojo, and you know how there's like that counter, and you could oversee the mats.
Yes.
And his voice just came out, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was basically stop. you know. So yeah, I remember that specifically. He very, he was very I mean, it wasn't like a bad scolding, but it was like, you knew exactly that what his thought was. So yeah, definitely stuck in my memory because I got big scoldings that time.
Yeah, you don't forget those for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you very much for sharing.
yeah.
You talking about Shiohira Sensei reminds me of when I was living in Arizona, and Imaizumi Sensei came to give a seminar in Arizona. And a lot of you probably don't know, but Imaizumi Sensei used to be the chief instructor of the United States for the Key Society. He lives in New York City, and he was good friends with Curtis Sensei, knew Curtis Sensei very well. And he was he resigned from the Key Society and opened his own school, and he calls it Shin Budo Kai. In fact, sometimes if you're in Curtis Sensei's class, you'll see a gentleman by the name of Steve Self. He is a member of Shin Budo Kai. And so Imaizumi Sensei was there in giving a seminar, and it was kind of his introductory, because the school that invited him to Arizona was an Aikikai school, but it was under Saotome Sensei. So Saotome Sensei kind of brought Imaizumi Sensei back to the seminar circuit, so to speak. And he was giving a seminar in Arizona. And of course, I didn't know him, but he's teaching the seminar as it goes. And then he comes over, and I said, "Oh, Sensei, can you show us whatever he was doing?" And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And he said, "Oh, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, me and my partner, we're in the Key Society." "Oh, you're in the Key Society. That's great. Okay." And then from that point on in the seminar, he would go, "This is the old style way of when I learned it with O Sensei, and this is To Sensei's way of how they do it in the Key Society. And this is kind of what I do." And he was like giving 3 different versions on doing every technique. But it was just so nice of him to kind of bring the few of us that were with the Key Society into this Aikikai seminar with doing it, and then the way we're used to doing it. And then he would make special points to come over when we were practicing and go, "Oh, let me show you this." And he was giving us these little extra pointers on every technique we did, because this is what Toy Sensei taught me this way, and this is this way, and this is this way. And he was just the technical master, so to speak, on techniques, and he was more than happy to share it with us and make us feel comfortable at that seminar. And that's kind of the attitude you have to have. Just have that beginner's mind attitude, that be open for everything and practice your awareness, like Reina was talking about and Vogel Sensei and Carlos Boyer Sensei they talk about is basically, it's a chance to practice awareness on a different scale because you're going in to a dojo you've never been before, maybe not knowing anyone, and just finding your way as respectful as possible. Now, I'd like to have, where did he go? Oh, there you are over there. Olaf Schubert Sensei, can you talk about these 3 pointers?
Yeah, hey, thank you very much. Of course, yeah. So my history is a little bit different. I came from different martial arts before I came to Aikido. So I had this training in different schools and styles. That was my way of growing up before I came to Aikido. So I was very used to training different things. So when I came to Aikido, I was in Aikikai first. And there it was, I think, customary to train with different teachers because this is how the organization is set up. There are so many different teachers and styles. It's not a homogeneous thing, Aikikai. So there are so many different teachers, all students of O-Sensei basically, who have developed their own styles, if you want to call it. And they are all in Aikikai. So you are still training in the same organization when you're going to different dojos with different teachers, and you may encounter from this to this the whole spectrum of Aikido that's available, basically, from completely soft to neck-breaking hard, and it's all called Aikikai. From outside, especially now that I'm in Ki Society, I sometimes get the feeling that, like it used to be in the old days, we would never talk about Ki Society. It was kind of non-existent. And if so, then it was kind of, yeah. So there was this term and it was like a fixed thing. And now in Ki Society, not knowing Aikikai, most of the people, Aikikai is kind of a generic term for whatever, but it is so wide. It's everything available there. And so back then, in those days, we made a point, and my teacher, Saotome Sensei, who you mentioned, he made a point of us training with everybody. He invited for the summer camps different teachers every time, karate teachers, whatever, to give us a wider exposure. And we continued that here in Europe. When I opened my own dojo, training with other teachers. It can be confusing for the students because I always encouraged my students to come along. So it can be confusing. And interesting story about your red dots here all over. Well, we didn't use dots, but we had these bandages. So kind of. And I remember this being kind of nerdy.
You froze a little bit, but I think what you were saying is you had bandages that you wrapped around areas.
Yeah, to mark the areas where you were injured. And I remember when I trained in Orlando for a couple of years, there was not 1 week going by where I didn't have some body part injured. And I was always smelling of this Chinese medicine, this what you rub here, and it smells, I was always smelling like this because of some kind of injury, strain, or bruise or something. So this is how we trained. And by extension, you were forced to be attentive when you trained with another teacher. Because if you weren't, the chances of injury were pretty high. Okay?
Yes.
So that was our mode of training, to be attentive to what is going on. Otherwise, you break something. It doesn't sound very Aikido, I know, but I had a tendency to seek out teachers who are more on the martial side. Okay? So, but I grew out of that. And then I found Curtis Sensei many years ago, and now we are with Key Society. And I'm basically, for the first couple of years, I continued to go to some other teachers out of connection with old friends, basically. But now I have stopped doing that because first, I don't want to get hurt anymore. And second, I don't want to take break falls anymore. And when you go to a dojo and you are, well, you can't really hide that you are experienced Aikidoka, but then you are telling them, oh, please don't hurt me, and I don't take break falls. And uh, it puts also a bad light on your style of Aikido somehow, you know, like we are all a bunch of pussies or something, you know. So and also I try to focus now my studies on it is hard enough, as you all know, to keep one point and be relaxed and pay attention to your partner. And there's so much in what we train, and there's so much to still discover, even after so many years, that I don't feel the need anymore to go to any other dojos, honestly. It would be in my distraction at this point now. It's hard enough if I go to Holland to train with Toby Vogel Sensei, or when Curtis Sensei comes over. This is already different, okay? Or when Udo Sensei from Stuttgart is teaching, or Uwe Sensei is teaching, or it's all Key Aikido, it's all Key Society, but it's every teacher is different, as you know in your own dojo. And how are the students there? Do you always follow what the teacher is showing? We are talking about different dojos now, but I remember when I sit in Curtis Sensei's training, sometimes I catch myself thinking that I know what he's showing. This is the same thing. This is not beginner's mind.
Right.
So it's not only other dojos, it's in your very own dojo. It's the same thing, I think.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I feel the same way. I have no desire to train outside of our group anymore. I did it when I was younger. I enjoyed it. I, I, I but I don't see myself doing that much anymore. Vernon Liu, you studied in Oregon, I think. Could you give us some perspective from there?
It wasn't in Oregon that I
Oh, wow.
studied. When I left Hawaii back in '82 or '83, after about 7 years with Tabata Sensei, and then I found a dojo in Colorado, in Boulder. So I visited Kashiwaya Sensei for a few times in practice there. And during my practice between those times, I also had trips to the mainland and traveled to New York and practiced in the dojo probably one or two times up in New York in Key Society back in 1980 or so. And visit other places like in Berkeley and other dojos in the year 2000. But I had a break in between. So when I came back, I went back to Tabata Sensei, but then there was a miscommunication with him being my experience with other senseis, and by that time I was already a Nidan back in '82. And going further, practicing or not practicing, but just practicing on my own. Back in 2015, saw an ad, so I went to Maruyama Sensei's seminar and practiced there for almost a year, and then I found Lokahi, which was more in line, which Maruyama Sensei was drifting apart from Toi Sensei, which um, didn't feel the same as when I went to the seminar back in 1980 when I first saw Toi Sensei, and the touch of what he stuck in my mind is finding the right teachings that would um, get that experience and further that practice. So that's how I continued here with this teachings.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't understand all of it, but I thought you were from Oregon for a while, but you studied with Kashiwai in Colorado. Interesting. That's where Raina studied when she was in college in Colorado. Did you guys cross paths, by the way?
No, I just stayed there. I was in a military, so I just was there maybe once or twice during that time.
Thank you very much for sharing. Ilaria, you're in Seattle now?
Yes, Sensei.
And tell us about your experience from going from Honoka'a, a small little dojo, and the Big Island to the big city.
I haven't been able to go regularly because I live in Olympia, so it's a 3-hour commute round trip. The dojo fees are much higher than they were in Honoka'a, and I'm a full-time college student. The times that I did go, it was different, of course. I didn't get to train with Sensei as much as I wanted because the classes that she taught didn't line up with my schedules.
And that
It was
was
in the
Susan.
university district. It's in a big old wooden building on like the third floor. And it used to be a big school, so it was good. I enjoyed it. It was the same training, definitely, but of course, its own thing.
And that was with Susan Grigsby Sensei?
Yes, Grigsby Sensei.
Yeah, she's quite a teacher. She's a really nice person, I know.
Yes.
So, she trained in Japan for several years. You knew that, right?
Yeah, we used to carpool the classes, so she would tell me about that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, any good stories can you share with us?
It was long enough ago that I don't remember really.
Oh, you're skating out on me here. Well, thank you so much, Aloya, for sharing. Let's see. Oh, Christoph, I haven't got you to you yet because you're over on this corner. Can you give us you're from Belgium, correct?
I live in Belgium, but I'm a French citizen.
That's right. Please share your experiences with these 3 pointers.
Thank you for opening the floor to me, and thank you for your lesson. I'm not sure exactly what what you want me to say. So I heard you inviting me for commenting these pointers. Yes, of course. Well, I would say spontaneously, I enjoy very much being a uke, and for me, even though I might not act the way I would like to, but I like the idea of going to a place and following and listening. I've not been really part of a dojo for long enough to or yes, I've been training in places for years and years and years, but never really felt like I belonged to this place, and I was representing this place when I was traveling to another place. My story is that I started practicing Aikido in Japan when I was there for professional reasons, and I started out of curiosity. I didn't know what Aikido was about. I hardly knew about Aikido actually, and everything was new and kind of interesting, not to say mysterious to me. Already from the language point of view, because I would go to the dojo not understanding one word of what the people were talking to me. So I had to be extremely attentive to what they were doing to me, and they were very physical, very soft and physical. And I was learning by being attentive. And an anecdote, if you want, I was in Ibaraki-ken under Oba Sensei, and again, I had no really ambition about Aikido. I was just very happy to practice this. The first year I was practicing twice a week. The second year I was practicing 4 times a week. I was extremely into this, and what I was enjoying was also the social dimension of this, because after class, the first 6 months, what was interesting was the first 6 months everything was neutral, and after 6 months we started going out together. We started going to bars together. We started to spend weekends together, and for me that was possibly as much important as the practice at the dojo. But and one day the guys at the dojo told me, oh, there is something going on in Utsunomiya, which I didn't know was the headquarters of Key Society. Would you like to join? Yeah, why not? Sounds interesting. So what time do we leave? Oh, so you have to be ready by 3 o'clock in the morning. We pick you by car and we drive, and we drove there, and I arrived in Utsunomiya, and I saw the dojo there, and I felt like I was in a movie. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what the whole setup was about, and it was the whole day was dedicated to Dan testing. So there were guys from all over Japan coming. So we arrived very early, and then I was watching the people coming out of the dormitories, stretching in the dojo, meditating, etc. And then I don't know, we had breakfast. So I was just telling myself, just watch. You don't know where you are, but there's nothing wrong. So just be happy about the situation. And then at some stage, people started being a bit excited because Toi Sensei was going to show up. And then we all lined up, and Toi Sensei arrived, and he was following by 2 beautiful, tall guys who were, to me, looking like bodyguards. But Toi Sensei was smiling, and and nice. And we were all lined up, and he started shaking some hands, and he shook my hands, my hand. So I was very very happy about that. And when I liked very much was afterwards my mate from the dojo started joking with me. So I like this humor. They said, "Toei Sensei, shake your hand. Don't ever wash your hand for the next 3 weeks." I like this humor. I like this lightness. And then I spend the whole day sitting on the side, watching and sort of trying to absorb and get some emotion out of this little experience.
Thank you so much for that sharing that story. That's really a good story. I love it. And just to give you guys some background, so Oba Sensei, who Christoph started with, I first met in when I first came to Maui, when it was the old dojo, and he had come to train on Maui, and he was good friends with Curtis Sensei. I think they played golf together. But I remember Oba Sensei was with a gentleman, I believe he was from Brazil, traveling with him, and of course Oba Sensei didn't speak much English, but his student was there that could translate, and we were down in the locker room together in the old dojo, which was much more dungeon like, and we started chatting. And at the time, I was, I believe, second Q, so I am wearing at my dojo in Arizona, we had, of course, colored belts for, we had two yellow, fifth was yellow, fourth was yellow, third was blue, and then brown. So we would hand down belts. So if somebody trained you to be fifth Q or fourth Q, and you were getting tested for third, they give you their old blue belt, and etc. So I had inherited a brown belt that was probably, I don't know, 10 years old. It was frayed, it was faded, and that's what I was wearing because that's what we wore, when we handed down belts. And I'm wearing the belt in the locker room. I'm putting it on, and Oba Sensei looks at my belt and goes, "Is that a faded black belt?" And I was like, "No, it's not. I am like second Q." He went, "Oh, well, you should get a new belt." And then I proceeded to tell him the story. Well, at my dojo, we hand down belts, that's what. And then he went, "Oh, that is a very good tradition. You should continue doing that. That belt is okay." And he was such a nice man. And if you ever come to Maui, you will see all of our weapons were donated by his dojo. So the Maui dojo is called Shunshinkan, named after Suzuki Sensei, and his dojo is called Shoshinkan. And on all of our weapons in red lettering is his dojo's kanji. So that's where that comes from. And we were about out of time. I have a story. And okay, so here's the deal with the story this time. This story is a 9-part story. So I realize you probably can't commit to the next 9 weeks, although I have. So what I'm going to have John do is I'm going to read the first part of the story tonight, and then next week he'll put that part that I read in the chat for people to read it so they can refresh themselves on where we are in the story. But this story is called The White Bird. It's pretty eclectic, but this story has been read at lots of retreats, mostly Zen retreats. So I will, even though it's not a Zen story, it is a European story. So this is called The White Bird. And you can see, you can read a lot into this story. So I encourage you guys to follow along and read it next week again. But basically it starts with, once upon a time, there was a king who was getting old, and he began to think of giving up the governing and retiring. But here was the trouble. He had 3 sons, and each one of them was just as clever as the other, so that the old king could not tell who to choose as his successor. He thought and thought until finally he had an idea. He should send all 3 of the princes on a quest, and whichever of them returned back with an apple from the tree of happiness would be fit to be king. So off went the three to seek for what they wanted. They traveled all day without breaks or food, and towards evening they came upon a place on the road where two houses stood. On the one side of the road and on another house sat. On one side was a huge grand mansion. Every window was lit up by the warm fires and the bright lights within, and even out on the road, one could hear the folks within having a grand time, laughing, singing, clinking their glasses. The smell of the cooking in the kitchen was enough to make one hungry, just to smell the steam. Over the door was a sign, and on that sign was written, "Who enters here shall have what he likes and pay nothing for it." Now the other house was a poor, small, frail, falling down dark hut without a spark of light or a fire shining at the windows. There was also a sign over that door, and on that sign was written, "Who enters here shall have what he needs and pay what he can." "The mansion is clearly the place for us," said the older brothers, and they pointed with their thumbs to the grand house, where there was good company, plenty to eat, and good drink, and nothing to pay. "Yes," said the youngest of the three, "that is all very well, but I would rather pay for what I need than get what I like for nothing." How the two older brothers laughed at the younger one, but all the same the younger one held to what he said, and he said to his older brothers, and they flew off in a huff, "Go your way, and we'll go ours." And into the grand house they went. There they gave themselves up to ease and comfort, and it was a merry time they had of it, I can tell you. But the youngest brother went over to the little dark house and knocked upon the door, and it was opened by a poor old man whose head and beard were as white as the snow, and whose clothes hung about him in tatters. And we'll end it there. You have to get the rest of the story next week. But think about it. Pay what you can. And with that, thanks for coming. Next week, we'll continue with the training manual. And with that, John, I will say, as the closing, domo arigato gozaimashita. Thanks a lot, guys. Don't forget Charles Boyer Sensei's class tomorrow night. And then, of course, Curtis Sensei Wednesday and Friday. Thanks a lot, guys.